Recording this in the cloud. All right. Well, hey guys, welcome to Risk Management 2025. Can you believe it? It's our first actual call together here in 2025. And if you're not muted, please do mute. That'd be super helpful. This call is designed from top to bottom to hopefully give you a better understanding of what our standards are in terms of risk management, in terms of our parks and what we're trying to accomplish. Listen, we're trying to do a lot of things on any given day, right? Draw a great guest experience, a clean time in our parks for our parks to be clean and be four-wall strong, as I like to put it. We also want to keep our guest number one. Obviously, it's a core value. All that ties back to this one thing, which is risk management. And yes, we want to upsell. Yes, we want to have amazing team members and with an amazing team. But at the end of the day, if we don't do this one thing exceptionally well, if we're not a leader in the industry in this area, well, then what are we, right? And this has a high cost to it if we don't do this to the degree in which we're supposed to. Full disclosure, this wasn't intended to be the first call of the year. We were going to do a nation call, but I think it's in its proper place as sort of a primary call. It's the first call with so many different managers from so many different parks on this particular call, this training, if you will. This was also supposed to be on Delight Tree, and it will inevitably be there. There's pros and cons with both. Self-guided on Delight Tree, we can kind of keep score. We can see who's filling that in. At the end of this call, though, there is going to be a quiz I send out, and you do have to have 100% on it. Fret not, though. I believe I'm going to equip you today to get 100%. If you don't get 100%, I'll even send you the slide deck so that you can go through it on your own time to fill it out again, because we have to have that 100% completion in this all too important area of our park systems. And of course, like I said, when it's all said and done, the goal with this sort of thing is to make you that much more competent and confident in the area of risk management. And we can do this call together. It's great. Have conversation, but ultimately the goal is going to be that this is going to be a Delight Tree option. It's going to be a training, if you will, more self-guided than anything else. So this may be the last time we're together in this way, but it's no less important. It's absolutely very important. What is risk management? For those who have been on this call before and have seen this slide deck before, there's some ads, there's some additions to this particular slide deck. This is a constant, though, defining what is risk management. In business, it's the forecasting and evaluation of financial risk together with the identification of procedures to avoid or minimize their impact. That is quite a wordy expression, simply put, and not so much concisely put, but still I think a little bit easier on the eyes. Is risk management is a combination of training, processes, and systems designed to mitigate loss and minimize liability within our business around incidents. And so, again, it's so important. I ask you now, and when I ask a question, please feel free to unmute yourself. But if everyone unmutes themselves and 10 people start talking, it's just going to be a lot of noise, right? But I do want to hear from you, whether you unmute yourself, and we'll get a few people to unmute themselves here in a moment, or at least add to the chat here on Zoom, add to the chat your response, that is. So the question is, what is your comfort level with risk management? If 0 is you are absolutely terrified by this thing called risk management, or maybe the answer to that is for 0, what is risk management? I have no idea what this is, then put a 0. But then if you're like a master of it, you could train it down to someone else, put a 10, right? So 0 to 10. Would love to either read your responses, and for those that feel so bold, tell me where you're at right now, 0 to 10 with risk management.
This actually works.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Don't all unmute at once, everyone, but I can speak. I would say I think risk management means so many different things, from kind of like our business standpoint to other business standpoints, from what I'm learning kind of business school wise. So I think there's multiple definitions we could look into, but in terms of our risk management, I'd put myself as kind of like 8, 9, high level. I mean, there's always room for improvement. We're always learning new things. But the general scheme of risk management and everything there, like a 5. because there's so much to learn in different businesses and what it looks like. Um, that's what my answer would be.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you going first. And we are talking about Slick City risk management. But you're right, that could be defined in a multitude of different ways. So please do add what your number is. Is it a 5? Awesome, put a 5. If it's a 7, again, not going to be an issue. If it's a low number or a higher number, the hope is when I ask this question at the very end, you feel that much more confident and competent in this area, and you've come up maybe a couple scores, right? Maybe you put a 6 and now you're an 8. That would be awesome, and that's really the goal here. So another question for you, and then again, feel free to unmute yourself. Love to hear from a couple of you, but again, don't all talk at once. Do you remember the first time you rode a bike? Take this as an icebreaker, if you will, and please add it to the chat. If you don't feel like talking, that's totally fine, but please do add your response to the chat. But for a couple of you, if you could just speak out, do you remember the first time you rode a bike?
Who's bubblegum?
Great. Scores are still coming in. Michael asking about Jen's handle. She's bubblegum. There's your answer. Awesome. There you go, Jennifer from Peoria. That was a very quick response, Jennifer.
Yeah, that was quick.
So do you remember the first time you rode a bike? I'll go first on my end. I don't necessarily remember the first time on a tricycle or a bike with training wheels, but I do recall the first time I didn't have training wheels on my bike because I was being led behind. And this almost could be a picture, a shadow of my time with my dad, kind of coming up from behind, and he's pushing my bike ahead. And in this case, I did have the training wheels on. And I remember my mom, who wasn't a big lady by any means, but had a camera over her shoulder, because back in the 80s, these cameras were like giant. They came out of a giant suitcase, if you will. And it pretty much was right over her shoulder. And she's watching me as I'm coming down the sidewalk, and my dad's pushing from behind. He lets go. I'm feeling great until I'm not feeling great as I kind of wibble and wobble, and I end up in a bush, a thorny bush, and I just disappear from sight. And then the camera was going up and down, shaky as it was. That's the capture. I wish I could pull that video for you and show it to you today. My parents always thought it should have went to America's Funniest Home Videos, which was a big thing back in the day. But that was my first experience really riding a bike that I can recall. And maybe that's similar to your experience with riding a bike. So please add this to the chat because honestly, would really love to know what your first experience was like. Along with that, guys, though, did you know when we look at this this bike riding aspect, and it seems unrelated, but I believe it's every bit related to what we do in terms of risk management, the average age for beginners is between 3 and 7. That means something to me because I have kids 15, 13, and 10. At one point, my oldest was 7 and my youngest was 3. And there's quite an age gap there. There's a range there of skill and ability, and yet that's the average age for beginners. Ages 14 and under are 5 times more likely to sustain an injury in bicycle-related crashes. And again, speaks to me. I have a 15, 13, and 10-year-old, and I know when they're on a bike, there's a high probability, there's a higher probability based on inexperience, not having done this for a while, that they could end up in some sort of bike-related crash. And then bicycle helmets may reduce the risk of head injuries by 85%. That's a pretty fantastic statistic, and you should always wear your bicycle helmet. Now, all this being said and being considered, really quick blurb on this. If you could please mute yourself for whoever has themselves unmuted. Awesome. Thank you. So in terms of riding a bike and my years of experience doing it, I've rode a bike for many, many years, but I haven't ridden a bike in a minute. And I was recently on a bike, and anybody that was on the last time we did this risk management call, I led with this exact story, and I was just a few days out from an incident I had on a bike. In fact, I was able to lift my hat up and showed a nasty scab that was forming on my head. My head actually looked better than the rest of my body, but I was beat up because just 2 days earlier, I ended up going head over heels on my bike. I was riding around with my family, and I just happened to go to a convenience store with them. And I did everything you should not do when riding a bike. I was handling a drink in one hand, and the one hand I had on the steering column or on the bars was on the brake. That would have been my front brakes, not my back brakes. I didn't know the bike extremely well. I hadn't ridden a bike in a while, and I didn't have a bicycle helmet on. because I probably told my 13-year-old who argued with me why he had to wear one and I didn't, was that I didn't have to wear one because I'd been doing it for so long. I'd been riding a bike for so long. And I argued that, and thank God when I did get injured, I went hand over heels. I hit the wrong brake. I was going down a hill. Long story made short, I was beat up. I was bruised up. More than anything, my ego was beat up and bruised up. And thankfully, I wasn't more injured, although I was bruised and not broken, which was good. So ultimately, when it's all said and done, my apologies, Garrett, if you could just mute yourself, bud, please. I muted you. Never mind. We're good. When it's all said and done, risk management and the training of it, when we have familiarity with something, in the case that I'm talking about riding a bicycle and giving this analogy, this example, is that because we've been doing it for a long time, that familiarity can breed a sense of complacency. And it did in my world. And thankfully, I didn't get more injured as a result. The reality is knowing certain things and knowing that and having a healthy relationship with it, in the case of a bike, there's a level of respect and really understanding that knowledge is power when put into use. Even in our own world, listen, we see thousands of guests, right? And we do this every day. No 2 days are alike, but the one thing that we want to make constant is our effectiveness and our presence around this thing called risk management. And so we should never get so familiar that we get complacent. And whether there's 2 guests or 200 plus guests, we want to have the same type of measures in place in terms of risk. So knowledge is power when put into use. I had knowledge, but don't we all know if I didn't wear that bike helmet, which I didn't, if I did, it would have been that much better for me. Sadly, I did not have that bike helmet on. Standardized safety is better than unnecessary risk taking. Every day, all day, when we know something, whether it's an inspection that we have through Delight Tree, there's a reason why we have these daily cleaning checklists. Who knows we have these daily cleaning checklists, right? There's a reason for it. There's a method behind the madness. Clean out your blower motors on those air blowers. Why? Because it's a fire hazard and our equipment's not working like it's supposed to, like it ought to. If we have a plan and it works, a system and it works, we ought to be using it. That's why it's there. And then experience is better than inexperience. I don't think anybody says, I'd rather be inexperienced in this area. They want to be experienced. And that comes with time and tenure and really just doing it. So the call today, if you didn't get it already, it's really about risk management, establishing safe, fun, and enjoyable experiences for all guests at all times. Key objectives: set the standard for risk management in all parks. Eliminate gray area activity. Equip everyone to be comfortable with risk management. And yes, run safer parks. If there's one thing you grab from our key objectives, the ultimate why behind this call, it's to run safer parks. Let's become a leader in this critical area of safety, of risk. So how does it all connect? Really, we look at risk lens, and I would say risk response, risk report, and risk follow-up. Like a puzzle, these things come together. But for anyone who's ever done a puzzle before, if you're missing one piece, you know where this is heading. And in the case of our process, we lack a complete approach. So we need all 4 things to work together, to tie together, to give us that fuller picture, that fuller approach around risk management. So today we talk about these 4 things. Risk lens. Create a workplace environment that not only views, but acts with processes, systems, and training to minimize and mitigate risk potential. It's where risk management starts. Risk response. We'll talk about how do you respond? What does that look like? And really kind of build on some muscle memory. Risk reporting. When you report, what do you need? What's the, how do we go about making it accurate and timely and contain factual details? And then risk follow-up as well. What can occur after filing of an incident? A number of potentials exist, and knowing how to navigate them is paramount to our risk management success. Now, I didn't say this at the very top of our call, but just so you know, we go through these 4 sections. At the end of each section, there's a time to ask questions. Please write your questions down between those sections so that you can actually ask those questions that you might have. Now, say we get done with risk lens, that's the first part, and you don't have a question or you don't think you do, and you think of one by the time we get to risk reporting, ask it then. That's entirely fine as well. Again, we want to be here to support and assist you. Myself in the training department, James does a lot with risk, as you all know. He could definitely answer some questions as they come up. both during this call and after this call. Really want this to be a conversation. So first off, developing a risk lens. And for anyone who knows where that picture's from, this mural, it's the background at Chesterfield, St. Louis, but we have many like this, although it never said risk lens before. And I use that analogy and that descriptor for how we must view our business. Risk lens is so important. It's a lot like the prescription glasses I have on right now, no different than sunglasses you might wear if you were driving a car. Anyone who's ever driven a car with the sun right in their eyes knows the difference between trying to drive and see and operate a motor vehicle with or without sunglasses, right? If you have the sun coming through and you don't have sunglasses on, you're more than likely going to shift the way that you're perceiving things going through that windshield, right? You're looking at things differently. You're maybe driving slower. You're bringing down the visor. You're trying to operate that vehicle different as a response to not having the right lenses on. Once you have the sunglasses on, it changes the game. You're able to get up to speed and do the things you've always done. And so I like that analogy that we never take those lenses off. We always have a risk lens on. Again, whether there's 2 guests or 200 plus guests, whether pizzas are running late, birthday parties aren't going the way you like them to, or you have a line out the door. We can't negate this. We can't miss this. Risk and our approach to it must be paramount. Murphy's Law says this: anything that can go wrong will go wrong. All right. And for some, when you hear that, when you read that, it brings a sense of anxiety. I understand entirely. I'll ask this question: where does Murphy live? And it's a rhetorical question, but it's an actual question, because at the end of the day, Murphy's lives in every area of our park. If I could, I would actually put the number of areas, right? A dry slide, a too slick of a slide, an area court that's not fully inflated, a tripping hazard on the floor, a spill here, a netting issue there, right? Or even, like I said at the very top of the call, a blower motor that is filled with dust, and it's not only impacting the airbag and how it inflates, but it's also potentially impacting something at our facilities in the case of like a fire or something along those lines. Murphy's lives anywhere and everywhere. That's where Murphy's lives. And if that doesn't bring you some anxiety, and maybe it does, know this: we have processes and systems and a way of going about things that we can minimize, never fully eliminate, but mitigate the potential for these incidents, for the risk in our parks, which is every bit why we're here. So when we go through this, guys, here's a couple things we have from a risk lens perspective. First thing is inspections. These must be thorough, accurate, timely, and according to operating standards. Everything being reported on is time-stamped. Otherwise, it means it's captured and it's discoverable from a liability standpoint. Anyone who's ever, turned on the nightly news and saw something about another family entertainment center, maybe it's even been an amusement park, knows that when something goes wrong and it makes the nightly news, one of the first things that's looked at, one of the first things is asked is what? When was the last time something was inspected? Who inspected it? What was the amount of diligence around it? And again, this is something that we have to understand is time-stamped. It's not a pencil whipping exercise. You're putting your name on it. More importantly, the shift manager is responsible. The GM is accountable for the overall reporting of this incredibly important area of our business. And we've been a little gray on this in recent past, but we wanted to bring the gray down, right? Eliminate the gray when and where we can, and just say it out loud. The shift manager is responsible for doing these daily inspections, yet the GM is ultimately accountable for their park. So if something's missing on a Wednesday and it was an assistant manager who missed it, the above park leader should be going to that GM who brings it to that assistant manager. And then equipment experts, we don't necessarily have someone that we have codified as the equipment expert, but we often have people on staff, maintenance folks, and of course, above park leaders like James, right, that knows how these attractions optimally perform when they're at their best and when they're not, right? Their performing condition is really a great way to solidify a risk lens view of your location, knowing when it's performing right versus when it's not performing right. And if needed, please do escalate to your above park leader. And like I mentioned before, that could be James. He knows obviously a lot about these attractions and has reached out to you all at one time or another to walk through, to talk through your attractions and how they are performing. Next up, the question is, who is responsible for risk management at your park? Any guesses?
The guest.
The guest is responsible?
Everyone.
Everyone. Love it. You're absolutely correct. Everyone is responsible for risk management at the park. Absolutely. Park positions that impact team members, right, from sales to maintenance team, every position at Slick City impacts risk management. Manager on duty, ensuring that training is reflected into daily execution across staff, on the scene during instant response. General manager oversees the risk management training, process, and accuracy with systems for location. Ballpark leadership, responsible for risk management, consistency across multiple locations, and for follow-up with our insurance. Tools and systems that work. We have many things to work with and help us through this thing called risk. Roller, right? You'll go to Roller to pull up check-in history. You can obviously pull the waiver from here as well. A number of things we grab from Roller. Delight Tree and Jot are the forms we fill out. Those symbols are right there. Communication, we have email, we have Delight Tree chat. Again, we minimally use that for any kind of risk-related chats, if only because things that are put down on paper, or in this case, digitized, it's communications. We really want to refrain from that when and where possible. More on that a little bit later in the presentation. And then 12 systems. We have an entire system that's devoted to the area of risk. In fact, it's the letter E. It's the second or third E, rather, in the 12 systems, and that is effective risk management. How about waivers? Waivers are required for all individuals in the park. This has been a sticking point for some parks as of recently, that all waivers are required. So you need to look at your front end and how things are being done currently to ensure that if someone is in your park, whether they are participating or not, they must have a waiver. Waivers are required for everyone that comes through our park, and anyone who can sign it. It's anyone above 18 years or older, other than in Alabama, which we don't have any parks in Alabama, but it's there for a reason. Guests under the age of 18, under 19 in Alabama, must have a waiver signed by a parent or legal guardian. Durations of waivers is every year, right? They are valid for 1 year, and we never hand out a copy of a waiver without a court summons. I just filled out a waiver digitally for a park for Discovery Day. It was the Chandler Park I'm going to here in a couple days. And you do get this in your email. I've always known that, but I almost put it here as an example. So if that ever comes up in conversation with a guest, if they put a valid email, they're going to get that in their email. They have a copy on their end. We never hand it out on our end, right? So want to make sure that's clear that all individuals must have a waiver and must be over the age of 18 to fill it out. CAV model, part of Risk Lens. CAV model historically, and really the genesis of it, came out of parks that had more of a lean model in terms of labor. And when done extremely well, CAV works great. When done poorly, well, it can be just an atrocity. It comes from the namesake of CAV is coverage, accountability, and visibility. If you're not doing this with this approach, which really is to have maybe less bodies on staff at any given time. We know that a Tuesday is different than a Saturday. However, when we have that reduced model of coverage or that reduced model with staffing, we never have a reduced model around coverage, meaning regardless of how many team members are working, all attractions must be 100% covered at all times. Means that at times team members in areas are responsible for watching multiple attractions. It's really important that we understand and recognize where a team member's strengths and weaknesses are, their opportunities. If you as a GM or the manager knows that somebody's not strong on a particular tower system, maybe they're a newer action monitor, and now you have them between a couple slides, and the traffic tells us that, yes, it's slow across the park, but this particular action monitor might be challenged and not be able to move between those two slides very well. It's really important as the leader, as the manager, that you know your people that well and you don't put them in a position to be compromised in any way. That leads to accountability. They must be accountable, the team member that is, for the entire all the actions that occur at the attraction of their oversight. They have to be able to provide a witness statement for what happened at their attraction at any given time. And I think that's the best way of looking at accountability. If you can't write a witness statement to it, then you are stretched beyond your ability to really actually be accountable to that area. And then visibility. When properly positioned, team members ideally will have visibility of all the guests in their coverage area. Defining the correct positioning for all stations is critical to the safety and success of the park and must be a priority of the general manager. At times, when team members must move around their appointed area, they must be positioned to have optimal visibility of the guests in their area. And that really is the CAV model. We also have other things at our disposal. We have ourselves, right? As individuals, we have unique things that we can do within. And so this is sort of action monitoring 101, but it's really team member 101 for how we can relate to the guests, especially as it's driven and geared towards risk management. So we can take action. Proxemics is a great way to use your body's position and distance to influence interactions with our guests for safety. Kinesthetics, or kinesics rather, how to enact nonverbal direction and correction in a loud and sometimes difficult to communicate environment through choice hand signals. The eye in the sky sees everything and it's unbiased in its ways. And so slowing down, stop, going down to their level, to the guest level that is, and then slick delivery, how to speak effectively to get results. Communication is key in your ability to be successful with the guest experience. Tell guests what to do versus asking them to do something. So another way of looking at this, for an example, we've seen an uptick in incidents around guests running in the park. Our threefold approach from what we can do on any given day, yes, we're getting more signs, but who knows that guests don't read signs. We have it there from a liability standpoint. We have it there to point to and say, well, we had a sign up. But when it's all said and done, they're probably not going to read it. It's there for our sake, much more than their sake, to be honest with you. But at the end of the day, we have proxemics, we have kinesthetics and slick delivery as well. So with proxemics, step out and in front of the guest who is running. Say the guest is running at you, just step out in front of them. Position yourself appropriately. Put up a hand in stopping motion. That's a great way to get people to slow down. Maybe it's a young kid that's running up the tower stairs. Maybe you got to get down to their level, approach them in that way. And then slick delivery would tell us, tell, don't ask. Firmly say, slow down, please, no running in the park. And that's better than saying, hey, can you guys slow down? At that point, we've invited them into a question. Whether they want to or not is really up to them at that point, versus just saying, hey, slow down, please, no running in the park. Be firm, present well. You don't have to be rude. You ought to not be rude, but do be firm. We also have the safe approach. This is a newer thing we've adopted here in the last few months. My hope is, and my belief is, this is happening at parks. And we're really having this for all areas of the park. So it's not just safe for Action Monitor or for sales. We actually have it for events as well. We want to be safe at every position because every position in our park plays a vital role in the area of risk. And mostly, it's the same combination. It's the same items of note for this memorable acronym of SAFE. The S stands for smile and greet across all 4 positions that this method works for. Are they ready is the same as well. Looking for things like wristbands, city socks. Do they know how to slide? These are the bullet points we go after, the 1, 2, 3 ABCs, the basics, if you will. In particular with Action Monitor, the F stands for free and clear. Is the attraction free and clear of debris and other guests? Something to look for before sending people on their way. Sounds like accountability. It sounds like having a full understanding of what's going on at your attraction at any given moment. And then enjoy the ride or enjoy the park. That's another one, right, for safe sales. Is the guest positioned properly? If yes, give the all clear and wish them a great ride. So SAFE is a device that we use. We want to be able to go up, whether it's myself or somebody else from a ballpark, corporate, anyone really that knows this method, they could go up to an Action Monitor and say, hey, are you safe today? And they would know it because this is part of the training that they've undergone. They understand these things they're looking for, sort of this 1, 2, 3, 4 response, the basics, if you will, of each position around being safe. Next up is slide rules. Slide rules, really know the rules. Again, as I said before, we have slides everywhere. Does anybody read them? The goal is not to have this be front and center, the first thing that they're in front of. We need to speak to these things. We need to relate to the guests. We need to engage with the guests. It always is cause of concern for me if I go into a park, and granted, this is slide rules, but if a park front desk has a million things slapped on the desk, taped on the desk, it always makes me think, well, I have a bunch of people here who don't want to talk to the guest, right? We have signage. In this case, slide rules. It's a liability. We must have this front and center, but really it's an aid. Just like the slide position, how to slide properly, it's an aid. We have that at our front desk. We have these at the attractions. We need to be able to point to this. We need to be able to look to this, but not before doing all the other things we do, right? Using proxemics and slick delivery, for instance. But we have this for our team members to know and for our guests to be able to read as well. Safety meetings. When you think about it, and I'll start from the bottom to the top, we do this company-wide one right now. It's a weekly standing call, and it's for the corporate parks and affiliates that want to be a part of it. And it's been a fantastic call. It's a call that's a shared call between the risk department, essentially, all of what James does with risk and what I do on the training end. And the two of us, we've been just sort of heading up this thing for the last handful of weeks. And I'll tell you, it's been a fantastic call. It's not a call everybody wants to be on, but it's a call that we've learned a lot from. And thankfully, we're standing here today, not even having had this call today. We didn't have it. We canceled it because we didn't have anything that was level 3 and above for our corporate parks and those affiliates that are a part of it. But that's something we've been doing with great results. It just happens to be when you put your time, energy, and attention on something, you get something on the other side, right? It's the stuff we're focusing on. We're getting a byproduct of it. We're getting something from it, which is great. Managers, I would say if you're not already, you need to be doing to the Slick City Standard a weekly or bi-weekly leadership management meeting. And part of that should have something to do with risk, right? Whether it's looking over the incidents from the week to 2 weeks prior, but you're talking about things between the four walls of your location. And then, of course, as we all know, we do a once-a-month team member meeting. You won't get as granular and detailed in risk, but you might pick out some high points, some friction points, some areas of opportunity with risk, right? Maybe you're seeing some trends within your park. This is all part of having that risk lens. Really having safety is a key part of all the meetings that we do. So that brings us to the end of the lengthiest portion of our time together. I really appreciate you guys staying with me through this first section. But in terms of risk lens, do you guys have any questions?
I have a quick question. When it comes to
Sure.
the like safety meetings. So I know that not all parks have leads or as many leads as, Katie does. Would it be smart to because right now we're doing manager meetings every week, would it be smart to have lead meetings bi-weekly or?
I mean, I would definitely take that up with Jorge, obviously above park leader for you guys. Between him and Liz, they could talk through that. Obviously, some labor to that. But the reality is when it comes to risk, we can get creative with our approach. Don't necessarily need to have, I know some parks do a lead meeting. That was something I used to do at a lot of my parks. I would have my staff meeting once a month, and I would have a lead meeting right before it. I think that's a great time to do it. We would do something very similar with events back in my day, so to speak. I think that's a great way to go about it. Do you need to do it every week, every 2 weeks? That's something I would definitely take up with your above park leader. I don't think we can ever minimize this piece of the puzzle. It's such a big piece. And honestly, at the management meeting, if leads are involved in that, maybe it's the first 15 minutes or the last 15 minutes. I think there's some creative ways to do it. The important thing is that the communication gets out to the team in one way or the other.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Great question. And of course, if you guys come up with any questions about risk lens or anything else, there'll be a few different times here to ask those questions. All right. Well, next up, guys, risk response. And I wish I could keep this with 5 C's, but it's 4 C's and an S here. Care for the injured guest, create incident and accident report, collect witness statements, combine all required documents, and then submit the incident action report. And this is available for download and print. Anything you see here today, for the most part, is available or will be available shortly on Delighttree. But that's really kind of our risk response in a nutshell. Care, create, collect, combine, and ultimately submit. I'll break it down further for you. Our class of incidents that we have in our parks. It wasn't that long ago where we would have seen that our Delight Tree form had just 3 or 4 different incident types, but now we have these 9 classes. And I still use the word level. I use it interchangeably with class. So just know, I might say classes, I might say levels. I think of levels when I think of incident like numbers, right? Numerically, a level 1 or a level 3, for instance. But we have 9 classes. And this is really for an insurance piece. And this was to mirror our JOT form, which I'll get to in a moment. And so we have these 9. We have an X, which is an external park guest loss incident. We have an H, which is a health complaint only, right? Somebody comes in from the health department. Maybe somebody reported something that comes through. We have a 0, an incident without an injury, just something that happened, right? With an incident or without an incident, there was no real injury, but there was some sort of maybe it's something in the parking lot that occurred. Someone hit somebody else's car. These are incidents without injury. No one was really hurt, but it's something to know. It could be an insurance issue. 1 is a minor return to participation. 2 is a minor. We're not talking about a minor of age. We're talking just a minor injury, did not return to participation. 3 is a moderate injury, will seek medical help. That's sort of that urgent care thing. That is, right, they're probably not going to sleep it off, but they're able to leave of their own volition, under their own guidance, right? And then we go right to 4, serious, left with medical practitioner. That is our 4. And then 5 is paralysis or death, which is something none of us want to speak of, but it's on here. And then, of course, I did skip over, but it was rather intentionally just to kind of keep flow 1 to 5. There's L. That's a legal documents received. That's a lawyer letter. That could also be just a call into the park that there is some sort of liability, and we found that out. We would then file that in JOT. We would file that in Delight Tree as well. So these are the classes of incidents that we have. More importantly, really need to look at this as all incidents require Delight Tree and JOT forms to be filled same day. That may be new to some of you. And again, if that's a tension point, if that's a stress point for some parks, I know for corporate parks, that's where we need to be totally aligned. For affiliate parks, please talk to your above park leader. But we need this to be same day. And again, no exceptions here. The longer we go between the event and entry of event, the fuzzier memories can become. And so for the longest time, we did these 3s and 4s. Some of these more serious injuries, we did the same day, same shift because of the urgency around it. Oddly enough, ironically enough, the 1s and 2s, we would say, hey, you get 24 hours, 48 hours. These things would drag on. But those should have been the easier ones to fill out, to be quite honest with you. We really do need them to be same day, same shift. And again, if this is a point of contention in your park, if this is not the way you're currently doing it, please bring this to your above park leader. Have a conversation around how this can happen. But just from a company standpoint, we need these incidents to be filled out the same day via Delight Tree and yes, JOT as well. Incident response. I love my acronyms. I know you do too. Help our guests, I think, is a great way to go about, well, helping our guests. So this helpful acronym is how we approach a guest that's injured. The first thing is hurt, right? Are they hurt? More specifically, sometimes a guest is not hurt, yet assume a tired guest might be an injured one. That should be right where we go if we have a proper risk lens. Ask, are you hurt? If yes, ask if they can get up. If no, ask if they have anyone around to assist them. If area where guest is injured could cause further injury to others, close and clear out that attraction. The next thing is E, establish details. Check for time, name of the guest, and severity of injury. We never diagnose an injury, but asking questions, can you move an injured body part? What were you doing when the injury occurred? Who else was with you and witnessed you getting injured? Are all things good to ask as we do some of the fact finding, right? We're playing a little bit of detective, but do be careful not to just be firing off questions. Really come down to the moment, understand that they are at a time of vulnerability. They're at a time of obviously maybe even embarrassment, humiliation even. These are some things that are going through. It's a high emotional time. So as you establish details, you always want to make sure that you do the final thing, practice empathy. But before we get there, guys, loop in management. this is all happening very quickly. As for anybody who's been in front of an incident, knows it happens quickly. Loop in management. It's almost being done simultaneously, to be honest with you, from E to L. Radio manager with location, incident level, and time. This should be simply expressed as, well, for instance, I need a manager to air court. I have a level 3 at 2:25 p.m. This is something that's being said through a walkie into a headset. We don't have open mics. And then, like I said, practice empathy. And that can be across the board. No one comes to the park looking to get injured. Along with making the guests feel comfortable, we never apologize, but we do take time to show our care and our concern. And that's how we can help our guests. Again, this is an acronym that you should be deploying with your team and how to do an injury response. Practice makes perfect, or gets us very close to it, right? And knowing how to respond to injuries. Another thing to talk about, incident response, really, when we look at this, we want to map out with your local first responders. If you haven't done this already, please do. Look for how to do this with your first responders of mapping out an optimal path of egress. That does not put a spotlight on the injured. And for instance, if you have somebody who's not in the condition where they can be moved and they can't be moved, but if they can be moved and be maybe out of sight in a way that they're not being put, a spotlight's put on them, right? They're at a moment of weakness. We want to have a place to put people or lead them to if we're able to. But more importantly, from an EMS standpoint, I think it's appropriate. It's beyond important and appropriate for us to know, and for our EMS, if they arrive, to know where to go to get that particular guest that's injured. So it's really important that we kind of map that out. And I can't stress that enough. Not that we have a lot of ambulances at our front doors, but we don't want to get in the habit of having those at our front door, right? Bringing some level of panic, anxiety to other guests that are just there having a good time. Nor are we trying to hide anything. How do you hide when an injury happens? But we do need to have a clear line of mapped out of how to get in and out of the park with ease, especially if somebody does have to come to your park for, say, EMS. At time of EMS arrival, managing members should remain with injured, while accompanying park leadership should be at entranceway helping clear the path. And you can do this however you'd like, but just have a method in place, right? I'm going to stay with the guest. Somebody else is going to be at that door. We're going to clear a path so people, the EMS, can come and go as needed when this happens. But like I said, in advance, map this out with your local first responders. First of all, it's a way to stand tall together. It's a way to really be immersed in our community, to eliminate the gray area that can happen in this heightened moment of emotion. We want to make sure that they know our building very well, and that we have that mutual respect amongst each other, right? How to get in and out of the park, mapping that out in advance, super helpful. I would say best practice, pro tip, to do this probably every quarter, at least every 6 months with your local first responders. And it's just a good thing to partner with them and have that kind of collaboration. We don't want to use them a lot, but when we do, it's good for them not to be strangers, right? So with that being said, guys, we covered risk lens, we covered risk response. Any questions? And either I'm getting really clear with these presentations. I know some of you have been on this a couple times before, so I can appreciate that. Going once, going twice. All right, fair game. We're moving on, but if something comes to mind, please do ask it a little bit later. All right, guys, risk reporting with 100% accuracy. We want to report things completely, factually, timely, and accurately. What you see here is the the Delight Tree form. It's available for you there, completely, factually, timely, accurately. For those that don't know how to fill this out, though, it's fairly simple and straightforward. For anyone who's ever been on Delight Tree, you're going to go to the side there. You're going to click on Forms and Checklists, the side being on the left side. So that's the first thing you want to do. Click Forms and Checklists. Type in the search there, incident. When you do that, you go to number 3. You click on the 3 dots. It opens up to a pull-down menu there. And number 4, fill out the form, right? You just click on Fill Form. and you're going to want to fill it out completely. It's easy to fill out. If you run into issues with this, please do reach out to an above park leader. I know James has been part of many conversations, in particular with Delight Tree. There's actually a form you can fill out right there if you're having issues filling things out. But do be aggressive here. Don't let 24 hours go by, an entire shift go by without being able to fill out something on Delight Tree. Reach out to your above park for help in this critical area. We don't want to throw our hands up in there and say, well, I wasn't able to fill it out because Delight Tree was giving me issues. We want to be all over it. Next up, this is our JOT form for those that are familiar with it. And what do you know? We want it to be completely, factually, timely, and accurately put together. No storytelling, really just, like I said, a complete, factual, timely, accurate portrayal of what occurred. And many of these questions mirror exactly what you filled out on the Delight Tree form. So we have those two forms. Really comes down to the details mattering, the who, the what, the where, the when, the how. Like I said, it's not so much storytelling as much as it is fact-finding. What actually occurred? Who did it occur with? Where did it occur? When and how did it all happen? I want to talk about witness statements as well. We have a witness statement here, and this is a paper version, and our incident report also, we have a paper version for that. That's going to be made available, if not already, on Delight Tree. We want these paper versions to be available. There's benefits to it, which I'll get to in just a moment. But I want to cover really what we're looking for with these different level of incidents. Level 1, we really would like there to be one witness. Now, I know that almost seems arbitrary because a level 1 typically is not a serious injury, right? It's a level 1 injury for a reason, but it's practice. And we know we have a witness because, as you'll see here in a minute, we have some options, 2 of which that are internal options. So having that one witness, I would say practice makes perfect or gets us very close to it. We want that one witness. Level 2, 2 witnesses. Level 3, 3 or 4 witnesses. But we want reliable, good, credible witnesses. And I think that I'd rather have less witnesses that are credible than more witnesses that are foggy in memory or making stuff up as they go, right? We want to have credible, reliable witnesses. And then level 4 plus, 4 more witnesses would not hinder or hurt us unless they're not credible. That gets me to witness options. Every time, right, we could have a manager on this one because managers are the individual who handle the incident response. This should include details of the injury, not a diagnosis, response time, other surrounding circumstances, and overall handling of an incident. Might be something where they give some additional context. Maybe the guest came out and said, hey, yeah, I blew out my knee again playing this basketball game at the air court. I keep messing my knee up. I had an injury 2 years ago, whatever that might be. That fact finding, that additional information can be very helpful. What about a team member? Individual who was accountable to the attraction. It comes back to that CAV model. They have to have that accountability. This should include response time, how it happened, and or the circumstances around the incident. It's really important that this is not drawn up by the team member as a way of them defending themselves. I've seen that before on certain witness statements. The team member realizes they were maybe not where they were supposed to be. They didn't have that full accountability over their area, and they start to write it like a defense of what they didn't have going their way, and they maybe put that back on the park for whatever reason. Listen, the eye in the sky, the camera that is, does not lie. They just need to tell the truth. They need to speak to how it happened and what happened there. And then third-party person should be someone who saw the injury and can describe in detail what occurred, not speculation. Individuals should not be of relation or connection to the injured. That goes back to that. We don't want them to be a biased individual. It should be unbiased. They should not fill out their own witness statement for legibility's sake. So it's more like an interview from manager to that witness. What did you see? Where were you when it occurred? And really kind of going through that vetting process. That's that third-party, unbiased individual. But at the very least, we should always have a manager and team member. And maybe it's team members. But again, if we can get to that magic count of 2 credible witnesses or 3 or more, obviously depending on the level of injury, that's where we want to be. Video photo requirements. Level 1 footage is not required except at the discretion of the GM where deemed necessary. Level 2, and again, these are guiding, this is just a guide, so to speak. Things can differentiate from this depending on some of the levels and the tiers around these injuries. Maybe there's a greater sight line to it. Something's been brought up that wasn't initially brought up. Maybe even the injury came up a notch from, say, a 2 to a 3. This can change just based on that. But level 2, footage from 1 to 2 camera angles for 3 minutes before, 3 minutes after the injury as well. And then level 3 plus, footage from 1 to 2 camera angles for 3 minutes before, 3 minutes uploaded to the light tree. If EMS involved, include footage until EMS leaves the park with the injured guest. This must be uploaded to the light tree. In addition, 2 minutes of footage of the guest checking in at the waiver station, purchasing tickets at the front desk. The entire visit must be pulled for level 4 incidents. And in some cases, level 3, we do the same. At this time, we have the ability with the cloud, right? Everybody talks about the cloud. Where does it all go to? It goes to the cloud. We used to really have a constraint around storage capacity. We don't really have that any longer. And so although we know it takes a lot of time, we also can't rely on, we have 365, a year's worth of footage. We'll pull it up in 6 months. We don't want to be in a position to go pull it back up in 6 months and something happened to one of those drives. So in most cases, not all cases, even with those level 3s, if you're already in there and you're pulling that footage, just pull it all. And it's high likelihood you're above park leader and or even James, maybe myself as well. We might reach out to you and say, just pull the entirety of that visit. Also, you might have somebody else reach out to you, but we'll get to that in a moment. Photos. A picture should be taken of the attraction area where the injury took place for all level 3 and above injuries. This should occur as soon as practical while filling out the incident report. Only take photo of where incident occurred. Do not take photos of injured guest or injury. And I can almost say that with a smile, but I really can't smile all that wide because it's occurred before in our historical past. So don't take a picture of the injury, please, or the guest for that matter. A new addition, if EMS has to come to your park, it's never a fun time. It's never a great time by any means. Not only are you mapping out a way for them to get in and out of the park, and I like I said, I think doing that beforehand, super helpful. But along with compiling all those documents that are required for a level 4 incident, you must reach out to above park leader, your above park leader, as soon as gas has been taken care of by EMS. Like anything, we want to practice empathy. We want to take care of the gas. We don't want to be throwing a bunch of reports at them and acting like we're trying to cover our butts. We want to do our due diligence, but we want to take care of the guest first and foremost. But as soon as that guest is up and out of the location, do get a hold of your above park leader. And there's been some debate about who do we reach out to? Do you reach out to James or do you reach out to your above park leader for this example? I think as we scale out and as we get bigger in scope, and I just literally had this conversation, yes, with James earlier, and now most recently with Wade, we just came to the discussion, came to the decision, just reach up to your above park leader. But then it's on that above park leader to really then partner up with, say, James, for instance, if it's an attraction-related issue or there's cause for concern that could escalate, that above park leader needs to know whether to reach out and connect with somebody else beyond the scope of he or she and that park that they are tending to. So again, if EMS is called to your park at any time, we don't want to be caught by surprise. Please dial up your above park leader who will, if needed, make it known to other people who need to know about it. But we need to have that as a standard going forward, that anytime EMS arrives at that location, your location, that you bring, and if you were to say a assistant manager, I would suggest also bringing your GM into the fold. But more importantly, it needs to be brought up to the above park leader. It's just that critical. It's just that important. SOS alerts. It's not all about injuries, but it is about risk. And so we do a park alert at slickcity.com and a Delight Tree form. Again, easy to pull up. Just type in park alert. And this is for anything that could be tied to, say, anything that interrupts park operations, maybe an attraction breaks, flooding, police called to park, damage to the facilities, any issue that could go to social media, that sort of stuff, right? That really is where we would do a park alert at slickcity.com or the Delight Tree form, my apologies. Response within 12 hours, it's more like 12 minutes. It goes really quick. There's always somebody who's ready to respond. And it should be sent, like I said, by email and inputted into Delight Tree via that form on the same day. Anything that could impact revenue, those kind of things are important to note. Park had to shut down early. It's going to open up early. Those kind of things need to be put into the SOS alerts, otherwise known as park alerts overall. All right, guys, I've said a lot here. Slick City Risk Management, Risk Lens, Risk Response, Risk Report. Any questions?
Lance, I have a question, not much about that stuff, but for the safe
Sure.
card you talked about, I know we have the action monitor ones. We are starting to get every action monitor to have it on their lanyard. Is there a good way to access the other ones for us?
Yeah, absolutely. No, great question. I'm going to have that available on Delight Tree between today and tomorrow. It's going to be also sent out with the Nation News this week because I have one that I just updated or I actually just created recently for events. So I'll put those out there for you. Yep.
All right. And then will there be
Great
a
question.
cafe-based one as well, or mostly just sales and events?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I don't think it hurts. Let me think about that for a moment. I kind of centered down the trifecta of those positions, right? Sort of those the main three in that regard. Cafe is sort of a spin on sales associate, but yeah, maybe right. It wouldn't be bad, right? I think safe across the board is good. So great question. You will see. Just wait and see. I might have one just for you in Denver. We'll see.
I'm holding on to my seat right now as we speak.
I'm. You should be. You should be. Absolutely. Hold on to that seat. All right. Great question, by the way. Awesome. All right, guys. Moving on. We're making good time here. This brings us to really the end of our time together. It's the last section, but it's still a very valuable and important section. It's really risk follow-up. Now, we're not doing a whole lot of follow-up necessarily in park by way of you're not calling the guest, that sort of thing. But we know that there's that potential that exists for the guests to reach out to us in one way or the other. And so, although you're not expected to reach out to them, there are times in which a guest and or their parent may reach out by either phone or in person. So I have found this acronym to work really well, and it kind of keeps with the H's. It's HEAL. The HEAL acronym is that post-incident guest engagement. And it's something we can use. You can put it down, pen and paper, when you're writing out a response to somebody. This is super helpful. It's especially helpful if you have this in front of you when dealing with the guest experience issue. And so the H stands for hear the guest. Use this time for fact-finding. So again, sort of painting the picture, setting the scene, if you will. Guest comes through your doors on any given day. Say it's this Tuesday, somebody comes through and they say, hey, I wanted to let you know there was an incident that happened at your park this past weekend with my son playing dodgeball or maybe playing basketball or just on one of your slides, whatever it might be, right? Take that time to fact find, right? It can be, thanks for reaching out. Can you please bring me up to speed on what occurred? Would be a great way to get some additional facts, especially important if we don't have this on record, right? Always see it through that lens, if you will. And then empathize. The E there is to empathize. Something along the lines of, wow, I can understand that your experience did not go well at the park, but we never apologize around any incident that occurs. Why? Because that can be seen as culpability. That can be seen as, because of the world we live in, a point of neglect even. So we never apologize. We do empathize. We want to ask clarifying questions. That's additional fact finding. This whole thing is like playing detective, all under the guise and sort of wrapped up in guest experience. We want to ask clarifying questions. Something along the lines of, I really appreciate everything you initially told me. However, I'm still unclear on these couple items. Can you please go into more detail about whatever that may be, right? And then the last thing is, I get it. Sometimes, guys, it's almost impossible to bring a solution to a terrible situation. In case of like an injury, there's no turning back time. It occurred the way it occurred. However, I think it's really important that we leave on a high note. When and where we can, let's leave on a high note. So it can be something along the lines of, thank you again for reaching out. I appreciate you taking the time, and we wish your daughter, whatever their name might be, right? Personalize it, a speedy recovery. and you'll be able to feel the situation out, right? This is where we have to kind of understand, how is the guest really in this moment? Were they just trying to bring us up to speed about something? Or are they just angry, right? They could be angry. So there's a range there. But I do think the HEAL acronym, when used well at the park, can bring great results in trying to just mend the issue of an injury that happened in the park, whether it was today or a week ago. I think using this acronym can be very, very helpful. And again, this job aid, this tool, if not already available in Delight Tree, will be put there for everyone to consume and use at your discretion within your park, but definitely very, very helpful. Next up, guys, want to cover general rules for post-guest engagement of what not to do, right? So we talk about how to go about things using the HEAL acronym. What are some things we never want to do? I'll just say it out loud. We never want to admit fault or apologize. If you haven't heard that already, I think I've said it about a half dozen times. Never get defensive. Never provide any insurance information. Never provide any legal documents and or video. Never provide any direct phone numbers to Slick City corporate team. Hey, I love our guests. I don't necessarily want to hear from them on my personal cell phone. I'd rather reach out to them than them reach out to me. Just saying it. And never say anything that can be used against you or the company. I didn't really go through this, but sometimes our team members are trying to be extraordinarily helpful and they're wanting that approval, that praise, if you will. Maybe they know something at a court, or say it's one of the air courts, or maybe it's a slide, and maybe it's the way it's been functioning, and it may be entirely unrelated to an injury or an incident. But if they're saying these things out loud and saying, hey, I noticed this wasn't working very well, there's always ears that could be listening to that. So that's something to really focus in on with your team, is to say, if there's an issue, bring that behind closed doors. It's not a conversation you want to have up on the towers when you have guests that are around you. Who knows what their experience was like in the park a week ago, right? Maybe their neighbor got hurt in our park, completely unrelated to something that happened. But we just got to be smart about the things we say, especially out in the open. Again, we're never hiding anything, but things can be taken out of context and be used against us. So never say anything that can be used against us or the company. Responding to internal requests for incidents. This is another one. This is an addition to this particular PowerPoint deck. At times, you will be reached out to by a representative on behalf of the company, whether from corporate or Ideal 3, around gathering additional information for an accident or an incident. A timely, accurate, and thorough response is required. Do not put these off, right? Do not put these off. Somebody's on the other end asking these things. Often time is of the essence. If you are ever unsure of how to respond to something, I'm telling you right now, do not guess. Do not guess your way through that. Call your above park leader. We live in 2025 where everybody wants to text and message and all that. If you're ever in doubt, just make a phone call. Again, things can be taken out of context that are written down, stored for all of eternity, right? Because it's a digital trail that's associated with it. Reach out, make a phone call, discuss things further. Do not guess your way through some of these responses. Call your above park leader if there's cause for concern, or you just have some fogginess around something. Please partner up. And here are just a sample of items that might be asked for. This is, of course, just a sample, not an exhaustive list. Tardy a visit to be captured and saved on site. They might ask for that. Clarification of who was scheduled, clocked in at that time. That's been asked for before, and I don't know about you, but I'll scratch my brain sometimes on that sort of question. I'm like, that was like 2 years ago, And thankfully, we have some digital records to go off of in most cases. Specifics around the guest journey. Something like, did they use another attraction? They want to see how did they operate within the park after that? Or even, were they ever riding the attraction properly or improperly before or even after the accident, the incident? And then even things like a recollection of a conversation with the guest, whether around medical bills, seriousness of injury. At the end of the day, we really need to own this. And one thing we've learned from these incident analysis calls that we've been doing, it's a standing call, like I said, every week with our corporate parks, is that our GMs are gaining ownership over these incidents. And they're recognizing from top to bottom, they have to be able to speak to all aspects of the injury, from response to reporting and beyond that, the follow-up as well. It's been a good thing for a company's sake. And if you're not on those calls and you want to be, please reach out. But it's an especially important call, and it all ties back to this risk follow-up and what we do on our end. Media guidelines. Listen, you want to be the star of the show, but you don't want to be the star of this particular show when someone makes the nightly news for the wrong reasons. So do not speak with any news media. Do not allow news media to film in the park. I've been on the other end of the call as an above park leader, thankfully not at Slick City, but in a prior life of somebody arriving to the parking lot and wanting to make their way into the park, and they were not welcomed and they could not record in that park. But that's never a fun call to be on the other end of. Do not acknowledge or answer any social media, email, or other online questions in writing about issues including but not limited to injuries, stories, incidents, or guest concerns. And direct all news media inquiries to your Buff Park leader. And we'll get you positioned with the right people. You will not be the one responding to that. Just bring that up to your Buff Park leader, and they'll know what to do from there. So, again, these are our media guidelines, how to have proper risk follow-up if and when this happens in your park. And that brings us to the very end, guys. Risk lens, risk response, risk report, risk follow-up, just a tad bit over an hour. Any questions? Either got you on a Sleepy Tuesday, or most of you guys would have answered that first question of how comfortable you are with an 8 or a 9. But if you're super comfortable, I love it. It's great. If you're not, hopefully you're more comfortable now. In fact, if you don't mind, I'll ask that question at the end here. If you could, in the chat window, if you could just type out how comfortable you are today, right? From start to finish. Maybe you were a 6, like I said. Maybe you're now a 7 or an 8 or something to that effect. But please do put down how comfortable you are. That's helpful for me. That's feedback as the Breakfast of Champions. Helps me in my pursuit to make this training better. Like I said, this will be on Delight Tree. It will be sort of a step-by-step training. It will be traceable, trackable, sort of a do it on your own. But I do think there's a benefit to doing this type of call. At some point, we're going to become so large, this type of call is just not going to be practical for what we're trying to do. But do please add that to the list. No shame in your game. So as you add, I'm seeing those pop up. Thank you so much. Loving it. Thank you for the kind words. Really appreciate it, guys. I've seen things added here. Key contacts list. That's awesome. Very good. Love the honesty. Love the truth here. All sorts of good transparency. Great. Fantastic. What am I having for dinner tonight? That's a good question. I'm not entirely sure. No one asked that question. Still figuring that out.
Lance, I have a question.
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Hey, so if I had a 5-sided die and I gave you $1 for every single number that you roll on the die, how much would you pay me to roll the die each time?
I just got done presenting a whole training. I don't know. Why are you asking me these questions? Ask somebody else these questions, Camden. What's the answer? I'm not even going to guess it. What's the answer here, man?
It depends. It depends how much you're going to pay. Wade's going to say what's on the sixth side.
Yeah, you might say that.
I'm gonna ask Lance why a manhole cover's round.
It's easier to roll it away. It's less likely to fall in.
Not if you're Hulk.
And if you're the Ninja Turtles, it's easier to get in and out of.
And your pizza will fit down.
This is true. Although a box. Anyway, we won't get there. Sometimes, man. Sometimes. It's Tuesday for me too, just like it's Tuesday for all of you. All right, good deal. Awesome. Awesome. No, great question. Ask somebody else that though, Camden. I'm questioned out. And I haven't even answered any questions, but
Lance, you're going to share the videos, right? Or share this video?
Yeah, this is recorded. Yep, I'll have it available. I'll send it over. Fantastic. All right, so everyone feels pretty confident and comfortable that they could fill out this particular, they could fill this out in a quiz form and probably do okay, do all right, 100%. Well, here's hoping. So I'm going to put this in the chat here. I'll put it here as well as in Delight Tree and the Nation chat. I'll put that there as well. But do please click on this link. I'm not going to wait for you to fill out the entire quiz, if you will. It will tell you after you respond through that quiz as to whether you have everything right or you have ones missing. No, it does not tell you the answers. I will know, though, that you didn't get 100%, and I will follow up with the actual deck. Obviously, the video will be made available as well. But the goal is not to put you in a spot to not get 100%. We want everybody passing with flying colors 100% with this particular really important piece of the puzzle, right? All right. Well, you talkative bunch here at Slick City Nation. Really appreciate y'all taking the time. Please do click on that link. I'm going to click on the Light Tree right now. I'm going to throw this in the Nation chat as well. Final time. Any questions, guys? Any questions at all?
No, great job, Lance. That's a lot of content in there. Thank you for being thorough and detailed and all that. It was really great.
Oh, I appreciate it. Appreciate it. Absolutely. And I mean it with the calls that we've been doing every week. I know I expressed this to you earlier, James. I think it's been to our advantage having these calls that I think at first everybody was a little. Nobody wanted to be on that call. Let's just be honest, right? I don't think anybody wants to talk about the injuries at their park or whatever, but this is where knowledge is power, but only when put into use. So I think we're going to continue to glean a bunch of good things from those particular calls. So I appreciate you partnering with me on all things risk. So thank you. All right, guys. Well, hey, I do need to think about what I'm going to eat for dinner. Maybe you've already eaten dinner or you're going to eat dinner. I appreciate y'all. It's a little later my time, Eastern Standard Time. But I'm going to now post this survey, this quiz, if you will. Not every question is probably a great question. If it's a bad question, I'll throw it out of the mix. But I think they're good questions overall. Do try to pick the most correct answer, right? You might have an answer on there when you go to pick. You go, hey, that seems like it could be right. We'll find the one of those questions or those answers, rather, that's the most correct, right? Try to find the best possible answer is another way to put it. So, again, it's designed to be a bit tricky, but risk management can be a bit tricky as well. So really appreciate y'all. Thank you for spending the time with me today. This format will change in the go forward. It will be Delight Tree, like I said, in terms of training. But I think there is still a place for this call from time to time. And of course, what a way to start the year. Let's run safer parks, cleaner parks, and more enjoyable parks overall. Really appreciate you guys. Thank you. Have a great night. Have a good week.
Thank you, Lance.
Of course. Hey, Krista, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. I didn't see you there next to, well, I saw Scotty earlier, wherever he's at now. I got so many windows open right now. Who's next
I'm
to you?
still
though?
here. I'm still here.
Scott's here. This is Amarion next to me.
Hello.
Hey, Marion, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, sir. Doing well.